Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear Vidura, now I am mad for want of the pleasure of seeing him, and just to mitigate this, I am now proceeding to Badrikashram in the Himalayas for association, as I have been instructed by him. Purport. A pure devotee of the Lord, of the standard of Uddhava, constantly associates with the Lord in the double perception of simultaneous separation and meeting. The pure devotee is not for a moment unengaged. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki Jai, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai Ki Jai, Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I'll start from the beginning. A pure devotee of the Lord, of the standard of Uddhava, constantly associates with the Lord in the double perception of simultaneous separation and meeting. The pure devotee is not for a moment unengaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. Execution of the Lord's service is the main occupation of the pure devotee. Uddhava's separation from the Lord was unbearable, and therefore he started to Badrikashram in obedience to the Lord's order, because the order of the Lord and the Lord himself are identical. As long as one is engaged in the execution of the order of the Lord, there is no factual separation from him. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chaitanya Bhanopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahakana Raghunatam Vitamtam Sijivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanutamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kantha Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Wonderful. Okay, so I'll just read the translation again. My dear Vidura, I am now mad for want of the pleasure of seeing him, and just to mitigate this, I am now proceeding to Badrikashram in the Himalayas for association, as I have been instructed by him. So this verse in purport brings up several points that we're going to go through, and I'm going to pose some of those points as questions. So the first question would be, how can one be in union and at the same time, how can one be in union with the Lord when one is separated from him? How can one be in union with the Lord when someone is separated from him? And it's interesting because in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first, that was one of the questions of the sages. So in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there were 6 questions asked in the first chapter, which is called Questions by the Sages. And the last question was that since Krishna, the Absolute Truth, the master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us whom the religious principles have gone to for shelter. So now we're separated from Krishna. What are people going to do? Where are they going to get that association of the Lord? So they're asking that question. And the answer to that question is given in the 3rd chapter of that same canto, of Canto 1, where it says, Krishna swadhamo bhagate dharma jnana dibisaha kalonasta dridhammesa purnar narko tunoditaha. It says this Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So essentially it's saying, the question was, how will people get Krishna's association now that he's departed? And the answer is through the Srimad Bhagavatam. So now that Krishna has departed for his own abode, then they can go to the Srimad Bhagavatam for shelter. So in this way, the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, they both allow that us to have that association with the Lord. It explains also in the third chapter of the first canto, it says that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. So I'm a teacher at the Avanti schools, and sometimes when I'm telling the children about the incarnations of the Lord, we talk about Nrsimhadev, and he came to save Prahlad Maharaj, and the baddie was Hiranyakashipu, and so on and so forth. We go through the incarnations. And sometimes with the kids, it's a little bit like, oh, that must have been amazing for Prahlad to see him. But now, Nrsimhadev's not here. But we see actually that it's being revealed in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the Lord is very much here and to give us association. And it's not just Prahlad, or it's not just one devotee, but he's available for all of us in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the form of the Bhagavad Gita, and in the form of the holy name. Everybody can get that benefit. So it's interesting because so Uddhava in the verse, he expresses his separation from the Lord. He says that now I'm mad for want of the pleasure of seeing him, and just to mitigate this, I'm proceeding to Bhadrakashram. So in that way, he's explaining that he's separated from the Lord in the verse. However, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada states immediately, he says, Uddhava's not separated from the Lord. He can't be separated from the Lord. So I thought we could look at some examples about how the Lord, about how different devotees are actually in union with the Lord. So there's a nice example in Canto 1, chapter 14 and 15, mainly in 15, how Arjuna, when he was separated from the Lord, because this pastime of Lord Krishna leaving the world, it's touched on in Canto 1, then again in Canto 3, and again in Canto 11. So in these different places, we get an insight from different angles of vision about that episode, about how Krishna, he was leaving. So in the first canto, it goes straight to how Arjuna, he was sent by Yudhishthira Maharaj. Yudhishthira Maharaj said, "We haven't heard from Krishna in quite some time. Can you go to Dwarka and find out how is Krishna? How are our relatives?" So Arjuna is gone for some months, and then finally he returns, and Arjuna, he is incredibly sad. He is dumbstruck. He's not even able to speak. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, he's puzzled. He's asking many different questions. He said, "Arjuna, what's wrong? Has this happened? Has that happened? What has happened to put you in this sullen mood?" And then Arjuna finally he replies, and he says that our dear Lord has left this planet. And then he also says, so in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, verse 27, he says that although the Lord has left, and he expresses his deep, deep grief, one after another, Arjuna, he is remembering that Krishna was here at every stage with me. Along with me, he was there at every single stage. And now, even though I'm that same Arjuna, I have this same Gandiva bow, actually without Krishna, I feel very, very empty inside. And after expressing that, immediately he said this. He said, "Now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead, Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space." So as you can see, he was really expressing the fact that he's feeling so much separation from the Lord. But then, what did he do? He thought of those instructions that he had been imparted. And which instructions were they? Bhagavad Gita. exactly. So he was reflecting on those instructions from the Bhagavad Gita, and in that way he felt solace. So let's read what Srila Prabhupada has to say in the purport. He said, herein Arjuna refers to the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, which was imparted to him by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Lord left behind him the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, not for the benefit of Arjuna alone, but also for all time and in all lands. Again, after the departure of the Lord from the vision of earthly people, when Arjuna was face to face with being vanquished in his acquired power and prominence, he wanted to again remember the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. So this is very instructive for us, that we must keep Bhagavad Gita close to us. I was doing a talk with the university students this weekend, and I said the Bhagavad Gita is like your map. You've got to keep it constantly with you. Has anyone here been on a journey? They've looked at their map once, and then when they've started their journey, they've put it away. What will happen if you do that? You get lost. Exactly. You'll get lost. So in that same way, those Bhagavad Gita instructions, they need to constantly be with us as our constant companion. Let's continue reading. He wanted to again remember the teachings, the great teachings of Bhagavad Gita, just to teach all concerned that Bhagavad Gita can be consulted in critical times, not only for solace from all kinds of mental agonies, but also for the way out of great entanglements which may embarrass one in some critical hour. I always laugh when I see that word embarrassment, because I remember Tribhuvanath Prabhu. He used to say in class, I don't know, Guru Prabhu, if you remember this, but he used to say, we are embarrassed. And I used to sit there like as a young lady, and I was thinking, I'm not embarrassed. Why would I be embarrassed? But the more you live, the more you learn, actually we're in such an embarrassing situation. The body's an embarrassment, the things that we come out with, everything's an embarrassment. And sometimes it's an embarrassing condition when we're not actually embarrassed, because we've got to know, actually, we've got to make steps in the right direction, in the spiritual direction. Otherwise, material life is an embarrassment. Let's continue. It says, the merciful Lord left behind him the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, so that one can take instructions of the Lord even when he's not visible to material sight. Material senses cannot have any estimation of the Supreme Lord, but by his inconceivable power, the Lord can incarnate himself to the sense perception of the conditioned souls in a suitable manner through the agency of matter, which is also another form of the Lord's manifested energy. Thus, the Bhagavad Gita, or any authentic scriptural sound representation of the Lord, is also the incarnation of the Lord. There is no difference between the sound representation of the Lord and the Lord himself. One can derive the same benefit from the Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna did in the presence of the Lord. So in that way, this is further evidence that tells us that just like Arjuna, he immediately thought of those instructions of the Lord. Similarly, and when he thought of those instructions, he was in union with the Lord. Again, there's a really nice account of Rukmini Devi. So after a class, a Srimad Bhagavatam class, in August 1968 in Montreal, Rukmini Devi, she asked Srila Prabhupada, she said, I feel so far away from you. When you're not here, I feel very, very far away from you. And then this is what Srila Prabhupada responded. It's very beautiful. Oh, you should not think if the words. There are two conceptions, the physical conception and the vibration conception. So physical conception is temporary. The vibration conception is eternal. Just like we are enjoying or we are relishing the vibrations of Krishna's teachings, so by the vibration, he is present. By the vibration, he is present. So again, Srila Prabhupada, he's coming back to that same point. Srila Prabhupada said, as soon as we chant Hare Krishna or chant Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavata, he is so present immediately by his vibration. He is absolute. Therefore, he said vibration is more important than physical presence. When you feel separation from your spiritual master, you should just try to remember his words of instruction, and you'll not feel separation. You'll feel that he is with you. Srila Prabhupada continues, so we should associate by the vibration and not by the physical presence. That is real association. by sound, just as we are touching Krishna immediately by sound, vibration. So we should give more stress on the sound vibration, either of Krishna or the spiritual master. Then we will feel happy and no separation. When Krishna departed from this world, at the time, Arjuna, so Srila Prabhupada also mentions this example of Arjuna. At that time, Arjuna was overwhelmed with sorrow and he began to remember the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. You'll find it in Srimad Bhagavatam. Then he was pacified. He immediately began to remember the teachings which was taught to him in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and he was pacified. He was his constant friend, so Krishna went to his abode. He was feeling overwhelmed, but he began to remember his teachings. So whenever we shall feel separation, the best thing is to remember the teachings. Then it will be very nice. Is that clear? So you can chant Hare Krishna. So it's really beautiful that he that he mentions that this is actually how we are in union. So our question was, how can we be when we're separated from the Lord, how can we be in union? And Srila Prabhupada very clearly, through that evidence, tells us that through that sound vibration, through the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavatam, and through the holy name. So really, it is very important for us to take that on and take these instructions on. Okay, so I wanted to reflect that what does this mean for us and our busy schedules? So we know, and it's almost like we know, hearing and chanting is the only way. Okay, we have to absorb ourselves in the teachings of the Lord constantly. But somehow, when we have full service schedules, somehow, whether you're living inside the temple or outside the temple, time is always an issue. Anyone find time an issue? I think we all find time an issue. Time is an issue. I was reflecting with some of the university students this weekend, actually. I gave the example that if you had a container and you have lots of grains of sand and some big rocks, what are you going to do first? How are you going to fit it all in? And we came to the conclusion that the way you fit everything in, does anyone know actually how to solve this dilemma? Exactly. You have to put the big rocks first. Because if you put the big rocks first, then all the sand will fill in all the cracks. But if you put the sand in first, then you won't be able to fit the big rocks in. And sometimes that's what we do in daily life. We fit the sand in, we look on Instagram, we answer the text messages first, all of these things. And then by the end of the day, oh my God, I haven't read anything. Oh, I've still got this many rounds left. And that's a problem. So it's really, really important that first we identify what are those big rocks. What are those big rocks? And we have to put them in first. The best thing to do is put them in first thing in the morning. Yeah, first thing in the morning, the big rocks go in. Because Srila Prabhupada, we've gone through several evidences here where he says, if you want to be in association with Krishna, he tells us exactly what to do. You have to be hearing, you have to be chanting. I remember actually, I was living here about 20 years ago now, I think, yeah. And I was here for about 3.5 years. And I guess that people from the outside will look at me and think, oh wow, you're really, really Krishna conscious. But I remember at some point feeling really, really lost. I'd been here for years, but I actually just felt really, really lost. And I remember going on the Bhagavad Gita walk. And while I was on that Bhagavad Gita walk, I came across a verse from the Bhagavad Gita that I'd never noticed before, but today I really noticed it. And that was 1858. Madchita sarva durgani mad prasadat tarishyasi achate tvam ahankaram nashoshasi vinangsyasi. And that's one of my favorite verses because it said, if you, Karan Prabhu, would you be able to, do you have that verse? If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in that way, not hearing me, you will be lost. Has anyone got that verse? Yeah, 1858. If you become, just remember, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such a consciousness, That's it. But act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So we can see from that this is an amazing verse, because it really dawned on me, this is why I feel lost. Because I felt very lost. I was thinking, this is why I feel so lost. I feel lost because I'm not hearing Krishna. I'm not hearing Krishna in the words of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the words of the Bhagavad Gita. I'm not fully assimilating them within myself. And that is why I feel lost. And what is a consequence of not absorbing yourself in the words of the Bhagavad Gita, in the holy name, is that you act through false ego. So it's almost like this verse is giving us two alternatives. If you become conscious of me, you'll pass over all obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. So that's on one side. On the other side, however, if you do not work in such a consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So if this is the good side and that was the bad side, I think I was on the extreme of that side. But it was wonderful that Krishna very kindly revealed to me, this is why you feel lost. If we're not hearing Krishna while we're chanting Hare Krishna, if we're not hearing Krishna through our rounds, if we're not hearing Krishna regularly, if we're not making that time, if that's not one of our big rocks, if we think that actually chanting and hearing, that's one of the grains of sand, let's see if I can fit it in, then that's a problem. And it will result in you, just like this verse says, feeling very, very lost. And in many ways, if we look at the mood of Arjuna, especially when he was feeling without Krishna, he felt lost. But then what did he do? He remembered the instructions of the Lord. So that's very instructive for all of us. So really we have to try to make that, endeavor. I wanted to read to you a nice account from this book by Hladini Devi. And it gives you perhaps a framework or some inspiration about how to fit everything in. Just to let you know, so in those days there was so much service to do and such little manpower. There was constant service to do, and it was a new Vrindavan in the beginning times. So this is Hladini Devi. This is an account of how she would manage her time. It says, Mother Hladini would do lots of things for 10 or 15 minutes. She always had a full schedule, 24 hours a day, always engaged at every moment. And she would always follow her schedule with a real sense of detachment. Because she had lots of service, she didn't have lots of time for reading or sewing. So she had 10 minutes at a time to read. She always said she only had 10 minutes on her schedule. But because she did it every day, she read all of Srila Prabhupada's books several times, partly because these 10 minutes kept her taste alive. She would find more time. Partly because these 10 minutes kept her taste alive, she would find more time, like someone who likes to snack out of the fridge. She said her reading was like that. It was true. She had 5 minutes between the offering and artik, so she read the Nectar of Devotion. Then you would find a book hidden away wherever she did service, and she would always read if she had a minute. Then she only had 15 minutes sewing time, but she would always be making an outfit. They were like her cooking, simple, yet so full of bhakti. She was always so controlled. At the end of 15 minutes, she would go on to her next service. It's interesting actually, because I tried this out. I tried this 15 minutes, just have 15 minutes interval where you do things. It is an absolute game changer. You do need a timer with you, but it's a real game changer because you actually manage to get so much done and you don't feel like a failure by the end of the day because you think, I did a bit. And often because it keeps your taste alive, you'll want to go beyond that 15 minutes and you'll want to make more time. And really when Krishna sees you making time, he will expand that time. But it's about trying to use that time wisely. As I was preparing for this class, I was remembering how when we used to go on university preaching, Keshav Maharaj, Sutapa Prabhu at the time, we used to drive to the university and there used to be some time just before, we have to start preaching to the students. And every time he'd disappear. And I would think, where's he gone? 1 minute here, next minute gone. I had no idea where he is. He would find an empty classroom and study. And we can see how that has borne fruit of not wasting that time, always trying to keep ourselves engaged in the teachings of the Lord, never trying to waste even small pockets of time, as we can see from Hladini Mataji as well. in reference to also studying, I remember going to Shruti Prabhu's house and seeing, like, Shruti Prabhu, he was incredible. He was just everywhere, constantly serving. I would think this person doesn't have any time to study because he's constantly serving. But when I went to his house, there was a desk and it was piled high. The whole desk was full and it was piled this high practically, full of notebooks, class notebooks, study notebooks where he would in depth study the scriptures. So in order to really keep that service going, you must have that input of the instructions of the Lord. Very, very important. I remember when I was staying here, there was Chintamani Mataji. She stopped me one day because I think she could see that there's a lot of legwork going on, a lot of stuff being done, but not much absorption actually in the Lord and the teachings of the Lord. So she stopped me and she said, "Do you know?" She read me out this one verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which I'll share with you. She said, I'll read it. She said, "Dharmasvanustita pumsam vishvakshena kathasayal notpadayad yadiratim shrama eva hi kevalam." She said that the occupational activities a man performs according to his own occupation is only so much useless labor if it doesn't provoke attraction for the Supreme Lord. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki Jai, Sitaram Vishwanamana ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaunitai ki Jai. So if we're doing so much service, but we are not actually absorbed in the teachings of the Lord, we'll only be able to go so far. We must be engaging in those instructions. It is so important to always be in touch with those instructions of the Lord. And that when she said that to me, it actually really, really struck me. And I remember Prayojan Prabhu, our hero Prayojan Prabhu. I don't know if he's listening. I remember he used to come up to me and he said to me when I was sweeping the corridors as a young bhaktin, and he said, "Look for Krishna in your service." And he'd say this while holding a plunger in one hand and a toilet brush in the other. And I'd be thinking, my God, he looks for Krishna in the toilets, you know? But he was constantly absorbed in his service. If anyone needed to find Prayojan Prabhu, you knew where to find him. You just go to the toilets and there he is, you know? So externally, his service was constantly cleaning the toilets, but he was constantly engaged. And he was saying, look for Krishna in your service. And he set that as an example. But how do we actually look for Krishna in our service? You'll notice another thing about him. What did you notice about him? Anyone know? He would always have his earphones on, constantly listening to the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, the instructions of his Guru Maharaj. So in this way, he was constantly absorbed in the teachings of the Lord. And in that way, he was able to constantly look for Krishna in his service. And if we're not doing that, if we're just doing the service but not actually really engaging and having that contact with Krishna through his instructions, then we'll go off tangent. We'll go off tangent. Very, very gradually we will go off tangent. Okay, there's one other point that I wanted to make. So we've explored explored the first question, and the first question was, how can we be in union with Krishna even though we're separated? And we know we have to be in union with the instructions. There's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami, he mentions in his teachings, he said, one who is lazy in properly understanding the Vaishnava philosophical conclusions can never become free from anarthas, the unwanted bad habits and philosophical misconceptions that impede devotional service. He then says, without knowledge of transcendental truth, Siddhanta, no one's heart can ever be spiritually attuned with Lord Krishna. If one lacks knowledge of his relationship with Krishna Sambandha, then proper execution of devotional service in relationship with him, abhideya, is impossible. So sometimes we skip to abhideya. Let's do something. But we must know that Sambandha Gyan is very important, establishing that Sambandha Gyan, and then we can act in relationship with the Lord. If I give a very simple example, if you're going to bake a cake, you need to read the instructions first. I have a weakness in this regard. I just chuck it all in and wonder why I end up with a mess. But really, you have to follow the instructions, you have to read the instructions, then you can bake a beautiful cake. Okay? So similarly, in devotional service, we do need the instructions of the Lord. We need to keep that constantly filtered. Remember, I compared it to a map. You don't put your map down. Interestingly enough, for a while, I was because I was doing different Bhagavatam Sanghas, I stopped my reading of Bhagavad Gita, and I guess I didn't even notice it. But then Jagat Priya Prabhu, she asked me, she said, "Can you come to teach Bhakti Shastri?" So I said yes. And then I had to really get into the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, and then I realized, wow, I've been separated from these teachings. They're so powerful. Never let go of the Bhagavad Gita. You know, from those teachings I could recognize, wow, I'm actually steering way off course, thinking that I'm on course, but actually steering way off course. These teachings of the Bhagavad Gita are so essential. Pradyumna Prabhu has started this really nice initiative to get people to daily read the Bhagavad Gita, and then he'll send reflections. So you read a chapter. It's a little bit like Chad, but slightly different as well. He emails you different instructions or different highlights in the purport, so we can keep connected. So I'm finding that at the moment, I'm finding that very, very helpful, because it means that alongside any other studying that I'm doing, I never let go of those instructions of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. Okay. The last point that I will focus on is this: that why did he send Uddhava to Badrikashram? Because he gave that instruction. And there are a few reasons. One of those reasons is so that Uddhava could get association, but primarily Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains this. He said, "The Lord thought within himself, I have fulfilled the desires of my devotees on earth who yearn to see me, but I have not fulfilled the longing of the great sages of Badrikashram, such as Naranarayan. Now the limit of my 125 years of manifest pastimes is expired. I should send Uddhava to Badrikashram. Since he is equal to me and is another form of myself, he will give them bhakti yoga as a gift." So in this way, Uddhava, he had a mission. He had a mission to impart the instructions to the sages of Badrikashram. And I was just reading that and I thought, isn't that very familiar? This is like our family business, isn't it? That not only do we get the instructions, but we share the instructions. So it's so important to share those instructions, and he exemplifies that. Uddhava is also exemplifying that he's taking that mission of the Lord to spread his instructions to the sages of Badrikashram. And just like that, that is also our family business, that we must take the association, we must engage ourselves in understanding the teachings of the Lord and also spreading those instructions. And I know there's so many amazing book distributors here who do that. And as well as that when devotees come to the temple, we can also engage them. So I will pause here for any comments or questions.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. So you're talking about, and Prabhupada also talks about it, that if we are separated from the Lord, then we can find union and following the instructions. But what if we have the other option? For example, in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, I think 16th chapter, the past time when the Lord plans to go to Vrindavan. But there, Gadadhar Pandit, he had taken Kshetra Sannyas. So he had taken Kshetra Sannyas thinking that Lord, for the whole of his life, he'll stay in Jagannath Puri, so he had taken it. But when he saw the Lord is going away now, he starts going along with the Lord. Lord tells, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells, that hey, you should stay here and serve Gopinath. But Gadadhar Pandit still continues. And there, Kaviraj Goswami writes that seeing this attachment of Gadadhar Pandit, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu extremely pleased. But still, externally, the Lord told that you should still stay here. So that is my question, that if we are separated, we can abide by instructions of the Lord and find union. But what if we have the option to be in the association of the Lord? Then what should we prioritize? Our attachment to the Lord or the service?
Okay, so if I can understand your question is that you're saying that we know that through the Lord's instructions we can be in union with the Lord. But if the Lord gives us an instruction to be separated from Him, should we follow that, or should we prioritize actually being with the Lord? Is that what your question is? Okay, so I can give my understanding, and I hope the devotees can also help me out. I think that when a devotee understands that actually it is non-different, they will act either way. I think when the Lord's personal association is there, we must take that. I remember Mother Kalangana, she would say to me, run to the temple. That was one instruction, run to the temple. I don't know if I followed that particularly well. You can see on the CCTV cameras, I probably don't. But that this association is actually really important because it helps us. It helps us to develop. And that's why these temples are established, so that we can take that association when it is available, that we should take up that personal association when we can. We should actually be very eager, just like Uddhava was very, very eager for that personal association. But in the absence of that association, then we might need to be separated. And we see that in the life of Narada Muni. In Narada Muni's previous life, when he wasn't Narada Muni yet, he was the boy who had grown up that was serving the sages. He had gone, after the sages had departed, he went through the forest and he was meditating on the Lord within the heart. And the Lord appeared to him. And Narada Muni was amazed. Wow, the Lord has appeared to me. And then he again tried to get that same meditation, and he couldn't get that meditation back. And what did the Lord say to him? He said, you won't see me again in this lifetime. But if you hanker for me, then you will be in union. So actually that hankering for the Lord, and we see that in the life of the gopis, that hankering is actually that non-different. So I guess in summary my answer is that if there is an opportunity for personal association, grab it. It's absolutely essential. And we must be eager like this, because when we come together in the association of devotees, it's so nourishing. It says, Satam prasangad mama virya samudo bhavanti ritkarna rasayana kata tadzoshanadyas papavarga vartmani shradadatir bhaktir anukramishyati. That's in 325.25. That in the association of pure devotees, relishing Krishna Katha is wonderful, and it really nourishes the heart. It's very nourishing for the ear and the heart. So in that way, take that association, grab it, be eager for it. But in the absence, we've got to be just as eager to grab it in another way. Yeah? Any other questions? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I was just thinking, it's such an amazing class that you've given. I never knew you were so scholarly. And I was just thinking, this could be my opportunity to glorify you, but then it would turn into a Vyas Puja or something. But I had a doubt, and it seemed that you were emphasizing the importance of hearing instructions, receiving instructions. And I was thinking the example of Arjuna, that he heard the Bhagavad Gita, but what he took shelter of, what he did was smaranam, remembering those instructions. And I was thinking like that example of, that analogy of if you are going somewhere and you look at the map and you think, okay, right, I need to go straight, and then you put your phone away or your map away, and then you get to the end of the road and you look at it again, think, yep, I need to go left, put it again. And I thought sometimes it's possible that someone could look at the map and just say, okay, go straight down, left again, left once more, and that's it. Smaranam. I was thinking, is it more important to emphasize smaranam so that when we are hearing, when we are reading, we sort of step back and think, okay, what have I learned from this? What can I take from this?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing out that point. Yes, actually, hearing leads to smaranam. Doesn't it say in the Bhagavatam in 1st canto, 2nd chapter, it said, Yadanudyasena yukta karma granthi nibandhanam chindanti ko vidasasya kona kuryat katharatim. It said, Yad anudyasena, this remembrance is like a sword, and it cuts your karma, it cuts everything to pieces. And really, the culmination of all our reading, the culmination of our study, the culmination of everything that we do is, can we remember Lord Krishna? Can we remember Lord Krishna? Because that is the one thing that will take us to him, actually. So yeah, I think definitely the culmination is to remember the Lord. And I think that while we're reading, while we're studying, while we're chanting, it's about creating an impression on the heart, a deep samskara on the heart. I don't know if you guys have found that, but when you're reading certain passages, some things really, really stick. And when you develop that emotional connection and you're really present at that time, then even without you knowing it or understanding it, somehow it creates a deep impression. So it's about that, And it's also that when you do read, when you do study, you develop a relationship with those verses, with those purports. You develop a relationship with the personalities that are in that pastime, and in that way it creates a really deep bond, and that makes smaranam very, very easy. Otherwise, it's very difficult to remember things if they have no meaning for you. Why would you? It's like remembering a bus timetable. No significance. But when something is brought into relevance to you in your life, you've actually built a relationship with those purports, with Srila Prabhupada, and they come very, very easily. It's interesting, actually, even when thinking of giving this class, I was like, I don't know anything. But somehow or other, some previous study has meant that I was very fondly remembering certain verses, certain purports, because at the time that I was reading, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then it comes back. So 100% Smaranam is really where it's at. And Smaranam is the culmination of your study, actually. Yeah? Our study isn't to show off. Our study isn't for any other purpose, but to benefit ourselves. And to benefit those around us as well. Does that make sense? Krishna. I don't know. Do we have time for one more question? Okay. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for raising so many relevant and points for reflection and meditation. Really appreciate it. I tend to be very analytical. It's one of my weaknesses. In the purport in the class, we spoke a lot about the vibration. And through the vibration, we feel union with the Lord. We hear from Prabhupada that there is service in union and service in separation.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada says of the two, service and separation is higher, it's more intense. So when we hear the vibration, should the ultimate goal be we should want to feel union, or should we want to feel more separation?
Okay, let me try to understand your question. So are you saying that because Srila Prabhupada said there's an emphasis on separation, what is the goal? Is it union or is it separation? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, but basically in the context of hearing the vibration. And say, for example, reading Bhagavad Gita. So when we read the Bhagavad Gita, when we hear Krishna's instructions, should the overall feeling be, I'm feeling more union with Krishna, or should the feeling be, oh, I'm feeling so much more separation from Krishna?
It's interesting. I think the senior devotees, perhaps yourself, is also better positioned to answer this. I can try. My understanding is that of separation and union, it is described that separation is higher. But Govinda Prabhu, please, would you be able to shed some light?
My first thought was the highest form of union with the holy name may be a form of separation, right? So union and separation of Krishna is one thing, but union, as in Bhakti Yoga, is another type of union. So if you're feeling separation from Krishna, you're united with Krishna in the form of separation, right? So you're united with the holy name, but you may be feeling separation. But regarding your question, my thought was, it's a bit like asking, should I prefer pakoras or sweet rice? But it's like, it's a taste, so it kind of comes within your heart. So Why would you try and think, what am I supposed to be feeling? Who am I supposed to love? What's my favourite colour? What's it supposed to be? That's my response, but I don't think you can create it. I don't think you can create the feeling. But there's a sense in which I agree with you, because what we strive for, if we strive for something, we have to have a way to get it right. So I'm not trying to be rude or anything. No. So I think you're right. If you want to have a certain particular mood, you should associate with people with that mood. So there's a sense in which your analysis of your path is correct. But in another sense, because it's to do with feelings, I wouldn't analyse it. I just don't think you should analyse it, because it's feelings are feelings. So it's just whatever comes up when you chant. If you connect with Krishna, Krishna gives you that feeling. So why ask? Because it's Krishna's decision. That's the way I look at it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Govinda Prabhu. Perfect. Okay, so thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just to clarify that point. When you're separated from Krishna, you finally meet him. It's so sweet, the taste of that meeting, that the devotee wants to go into separation again and again.
Wow.
Because one nourishes the other. So it's not a question of one or the other. They're both the same thing, transcendentally, but there's a difference.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.